So in real estate, there's a lot of different terms, and in any industry, there's terms that you may need to learn. And the term we're going to focus on this video is, what does cash flow mean in real estate? So here we go. We're going to talk about the 3 ways to develop cash flow and what cash flow actually means and how you get it. I'm a real estate investor. I own lots of apartment buildings and houses, and we talk about in those properties every month about how we can increase our cash flow and increase the money in our pocket. So what does cash flow mean? Well, there's negative cash flow and there's positive cash flow. So there's 2 types. Let's think of negative cash flows in the red. Negative cash flow means that you don't have enough money coming from the property to pay all the expenses. So for example, if you have $3,000 in expenses for the property, which would be your mortgage or your note on your property taxes, other expenses to operate the property like the trash bill, the water bill, perhaps you pay a power bill. You may also pay other things like maintenance bills. Those expenses add up to a number. And that number, let's say in our example that I'm going to talk about, is $3,000. But your rent that you collect from that property is only $2,000. So that would be a negative cash flow of $1,000 a month in simple terms. There's a little bit of massaging of that number when you talk about after tax, which we'll talk about later in the video. But right now, for our example, $3,000 a month in expenses, $2,000 a month in income, you're having to feed the property $1,000 a month to keep it going. That's called negative cash flow. Cash flow on the other side is positive cash flow. Again, in this case, we're going to say we have $2,000 a month in rent, so we keep that consistent. But let's say that our mortgage, our taxes, our other expenses, right, are only $1,500. So I have $2,000 income, $1,500 in other expenses, including my mortgage. I have $500 a month in positive cash flow. So that's what cash flow means. It means that how much money you take from the property and how much expenses you need in order to cover those from the cash flow. And that's going to be a positive number or a negative number depending upon what those expenses are. Going into this further, there may be some adjustments to the cash flow. So for example, on the first example where we said it's $3,000 a month in expenses and $2,000 a month in income, we're short $1,000 a month. But of those $3,000 a month of expenses, 400 of those may be going to pay down your mortgage. It's principal. Even though you lost $1,000, 400 of that's paying down your principal. So your net loss may only be 600 because you're paying down the principal 400. It's still a loss, but you're getting some benefit in that you're reducing the mortgage on the property. Ideally, what we want is positive cash flow. We want the rent to cover the mortgage, both principal and interest, and all the expenses, and have money left over. That's the ideal scene in real estate. Sometimes that doesn't always happen. Does that mean that the real estate investment is no good? Not necessarily. You got to get farther along. You say, well, let's use an example of I have $2,500 a month in income and $2,300 a month in expenses. I've got $200 in positive cash flow. For a lot of people, they're okay with that. But let's flip it around. Let's say that you have $2,500 in expenses and only $2,300 in income, and you're short $200 a month. And you say, well, I got to take money and put it out to cover this. Well, do you? Because you're going to be able to depreciate that property on your taxes, and you're going to get some tax savings. You're also going to be able to depreciate some of the losses, or write off some of the losses rather. So you'll have depreciation and some losses, and after tax, you may be positive $100. So a $200,000 loss after tax may be positive to you. The bottom line is that you're going to pay taxes. And if you have a deductible property, depreciation, by the way, means that you're decreasing the value of the property on paper. If I'm collecting $2,300 and my expenses are $2,500, I'm losing $200. Well, no, not really. Not after tax. So I'm not an accountant, but this is stuff that you can go over with your accountant, or there's some great videos online from accountants and attorneys that talk about this stuff. But at the end of the day, your evaluation of a piece of real estate and its cash flow has more to do than just how much you collect in rent and how much your expenses are. That's the simplest way. But when you get into the numbers a little bit further, you'll see that property that actually appears to be slightly negative may actually after tax be positive. And that does not include any appreciation that you may enjoy. In other words, the property going up in value. Some would say, you know, the simplest thing is an asset puts money in your pocket and a liability takes money out of your pocket. And that is absolutely true as a straightforward explanation. But you may have an asset that appears to take money out of your pocket, but when you actually do all the financial analysis of the property and you look at the tax benefits, you look at appreciation potentially, you look at your ability to depreciate, and you look at any tax savings that you may save, that property actually after tax may be putting money in your pocket. The bottom line is that cash flow is really about understanding not only what property brings in and what property spends, but it also has to do with your after-tax situation, which has a lot of complex things about it. If you say make $150,000 a year, you may start to lose some of the benefits of writing off depreciation. If you are a real estate professional, you get one set of tax rules. If you're a non-real estate professional, a passive investor, you get another set of tax rules. So it's important to talk to your accountant about these things, but I can tell you that I taught real estate seminars for years, and it was a 3-day event, and in that event I talked about the importance of understanding the tax law, because these were mostly professionals that went to this, and how they may be able to offset some of their income, earned income, from their real estate losses, okay? Losses being sometimes paper losses like depreciation, or sometimes a small amount of money that appears to be they're feeding the property, but after tax, that's money they would have paid to the IRS. They didn't have to pay because they got the write-off, they got the appreciation, they got the depreciation. They actually came out ahead $1,000 or two. But they didn't see that initially until they went through the process. Like I always say, it's great to use realtors to learn about the real estate market because they do it all the time. It's great to use attorneys to learn about the law. And it's great to use accountants to learn about what tax benefits are. And I always recommend you use professionals. One of the mistakes that you can make, besides, by the way, not subscribing, make sure you subscribe because this doesn't cost you anything, okay? Your return on investment on this is infinity because you don't pay anything. You're investing your time and you're getting advice that can make you potentially a lot of money. So in terms of your professionals, a lot of people are kind of hesitant, like, I don't want to pay commission to a realtor. I don't want to pay an attorney. I recently had a deal where it's a $7.5 million deal I'm closing, okay? And I negotiated down just a little bit under that. I'm closing it this week. I don't know the reason, but I think in order to save money, there was a quick claim deed that was done like 30 years ago. And because of that, the title company could not insure the title. So they had to go back and clean all that up. Now, if they would have used an attorney and an escrow company and done it an insured change of title, which is what they do, they insure it, make sure everything's fine, would have been no problem. But now they were delayed almost a week and a half because of this, and we had to fix it and change title companies to find somebody who would insure it. So always use professionals and don't think, oh, I pay a realtor, you know, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15 grand. Sometimes they'll get you an extra 20, 30 grand you wouldn't have got otherwise, okay? So don't be afraid to pay your attorneys. Don't be afraid to pay your accountants because your cash flow in real estate really can go up a lot by learning from people like me and others, as well as understanding with your accountant your tax picture, okay, and your realtor of what things are worth and what things you should be buying and not buying in terms of real estate. I'm Paul Maguire. Join me on the next video where I talk about how the wealthy think. And it's a great video I did, and it's there to help you to become wealthy. So I'll see you in the next video.